I, 35 feuds, really need some advice. 3 years ago, I was in a terrible car accident that left me hospitalized for weeks. A drunk truck driver plowed into my car, and I ended up with a fractured arm and had to spend a long time learning how to walk again. It's been almost 3 years since the accident, and I'm still extra careful while driving, even though it wasn't my fault. The thing is, my family refused to show up and be there for me because my sister had gone into labor. I was actually on my way to surprise my sister at the hospital where she was giving birth when I ended up in the accident. I was working at a company a few hours away from my hometown, so it was quite convenient for me to travel back and forth. When I got the call from my parents that my sister had gone into labor and they were rushing her to the hospital, I decided to surprise her. I borrowed a friend's car and hit the road. However, on the way there, I had the accident and had to be rushed to the nearest hospital. It was mostly my friends and coworkers who were there for me during that time. My parents were too busy with my sister, and I totally understood that at first. What I didn't like was the fact that even a couple of days after my sister had given birth, my parents did not bother to show up to check on me. I called them several times after my accident, even though it was quite painful for me to do so. I was slipping in and out of consciousness quite frequently, but the only thing I kept asking the nurses was if my parents had called, or if they had shown up. I was disappointed every time. Finally, about a week after my accident, my parents called me. Even then, it wasn't to ask if I was okay. They just wanted to know why I had been calling so frequently because they had been ignoring my calls since they were with my sister and the baby. I was shocked by how cold they were being, especially given the circumstances. Still, I decided to ask them how my sister was doing and how the baby was. They told me that my sister was fine, and so was my niece. They didn't ask me how I was, even though I was pretty sure they knew I had been in an accident. My friends had told me that they had texted my parents on every possible platform. When they didn't ask about me, I decided to offer that information myself. I told them that I had been in an accident and had been trying to reach out to them for the past couple of days. At that point, I had hoped for a reaction, but they just said they knew about the accident and that my friends had reached out to them. I got really upset and ended up asking if they couldn't even be bothered to pretend to care for me. That's when they told me that they had purposely not answered my phone calls and texts because they didn't want to speak to me. They believed it was more of a priority for them to be there for my sister while she was giving birth than to be there for me because of an accident that I had caused. I couldn't understand what they were talking about. As far as I knew, I wasn't the one who had been drunk, and it had been the truck driver's fault. But they said that's not what they meant. They claimed I had caused the accident myself by deciding to drive all by myself late at night, and that it was really irresponsible of me. When I told them that I was actually driving to the hospital to be there for my sister, they said it was still unnecessary for me to do something like that, and I had nobody to blame for the accident but myself. It was really horrible and insensitive of them to say something like that to me. I got really upset and ended up hanging up on them without another word. Later on, I found out from the hospital staff that when the emergency services had discovered me at the accident site and called 911, my parents had been contacted first. They had refused to show up and had even requested not to be called about this again. The hospital then contacted my workplace because I had my employee ID on me, and that's how my friends and coworkers found out. It was even more disappointing to learn that even though my parents had been called by emergency services and told that their daughter had been in a serious accident, they hadn't bothered to show up. Their only response to the whole situation had been to blame me for what happened, even though I was only trying to be there for my sister and the family. After that incident, I realized that even though I had wanted to be there for my family had absolutely no interest in being there for me. Even my sister hadn't bothered to reach out to me after that. For the past 3 years, I've had no contact with my family because after that incident, I really gave up on them. I mean, even before the accident, we had what I thought was a normal relationship. but I had always felt like I would get sidelined by my sister and her priorities. When I had my accident, it was proven to me by my family in the worst possible way. Just to be clear, I wasn't upset that they hadn't abandoned my sister while she was in labor to come see me. I was just upset that even after my sister had given birth, they didn't think it was important to come and see me. I didn't even expect my sister to visit me in the hospital because, obviously, at the time it was impossible for her. But it wasn't impossible for my parents, and my sister had her fiance and her in-laws to take care of her. I only had my friends, but I was lucky that I had friends who were good enough to be there for me all along. They helped me through my recovery, even taking care of the funds for my medical expenses. I'm still paying them back, but I'm really grateful for everything they did for me. I don't think I'll ever be able to truly repay them for their kindness and support. Anyway, even though it has been 3 years since the incident, my family hasn't bothered to reach out to me. Many people in the extended family have questioned why we don't have a relationship anymore, but I've had the courtesy to keep it all to myself so far. I guess we had an unspoken agreement that we wouldn't discuss this with anybody else from the family, and I had stuck to it. But recently, things have taken a turn. One of my aunts reached out to me because apparently my parents had been talking about the incident in a way that painted me to be the bad guy. This happened a couple of weeks ago when my parents were hosting a family dinner at their houses to celebrate my sister's promotion at work. While they were all together, the topic of my estrangement from the family came up. After a lot of back and forth, my parents finally decided to talk about it. They didn't think they needed to keep this a secret from the family anymore, but while narrating the story, they changed what happened in the aftermath of my accident. A few facts were true, like I had intended to surprise my sister by driving to the hospital, and on the way, I had gotten into a car accident. However, after that, they claimed that they had not been contacted and only found out about the accident a couple of days after it took place. They said a lot of time had already passed by then, and they were too preoccupied with my sister and the baby, so they didn't really think about why I hadn't contacted them yet. They also said that when they had finally found out about the accident, the first thing they'd done was call me up, but I had been really upset with them, so I had refused to speak to them. That was simply not true. They went on to say that they had tried to contact me on several occasions, but I had always rejected their attempts because of that one incident, and eventually, even they had given up trying to get in touch with me. Basically, they painted the whole situation to be a misunderstanding and made me look like the villain who had been completely unforgiving towards them for not caring. My aunt, being the well-meaning person that she is, decided to contact me even though she had been specifically instructed by my parents not to speak to me about this. They claimed they didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I knew the real reason they didn't want anybody speaking to me was that they didn't want me to find out they had been lying about what really happened. My aunt contacted me and told me that 3 years had passed since I had spoken to my parents, and they really missed me. She said I was missing out on the opportunity of being an aunt to my niece, and she knew she wouldn't miss out on an opportunity like that, so she encouraged me to reach back out to my parents. I was very confused, so I called her back and asked for more details. She told me what my parents had told them, and I was so shocked because they had painted me as the self-centered bad guy and made themselves the victims in the situation, even though it had been the other way around. I was furious when I heard what they had told everybody in the family about what had happened all those years ago. I decided to speak to my aunt and tell her the truth. I also told her that I was willing to put her in touch with my friends, who had covered all my expenses, in case she didn't want to believe me. But what I was telling her was the real version of what happened. I explained that it was actually my parents who couldn't care less about me after my accident. They had been contacted, but they just didn't want to be bothered at the time. I wasn't even mad at them for deciding to be there for my sister because she was giving birth, and that was also quite significant. But even after that, when they did not bother to show up for me, that was when I got upset. After I clarified this to my aunt, even she seemed pretty shocked and apologized to me for doubting me. I was really thankful that she had decided to speak to me, because otherwise, I probably never would have found out what my parents were saying behind my back. Now, I'm at a crossroads. The truth about what happened 3 years ago is starting to spread in the family. Lots of people have started reaching out to me, telling me that what I did by telling my aunt the truth was necessary. They say that otherwise, my parents might have gotten away with lying about what had happened and making me the bad guy in the situation. A lot of people in the family have even started to sympathize with me, telling me that what happened to me was really horrible and that my parents should never have treated me like that. They say it was unfair and undeserved. In a way, I'm really thankful to my aunt because she got people to hear me out and believe my side of the story. Otherwise, my parents would have gotten away with their version of events. But it has become a bit troublesome for me right now because after my parents found out that I had spoken to my aunt about this, and she had spoken to other people about it, the rest of the family started to distance themselves from them. I really don't understand how any of this is my fault, because all I did was tell people the truth. In fact, it would be incorrect to even say that I told people the truth. I only told my aunt the truth, and she decided she was going to tell everybody else. Anyway, they're blaming me for how the situation is turning out to be, because right now, nobody from the family wants to speak to them, and everyone has pretty much been ghosting them. This isn't good, because in a couple of weeks, they're going to celebrate my niece's 3rd birthday, which also happens to be the 3rd anniversary of my accident. What they're concerned about right now is that since the family has found out the truth, they think nobody is going to attend the birthday party. That's going to be pretty disappointing because my niece is excited about her birthday party and the entire family had been invited. But nobody has responded to the invitations yet, and some people have already declined without even bothering to offer an explanation. So that's what's going on right now. And even though my family hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, this has made them reach out to me. They've been continuously trying to text and call me. I haven't responded to any of their phone calls because I don't think it's important, but most of their messages are along the lines of accusing me of creating this situation on purpose to steal my sister's spotlight. Apparently, my parents and even my sister believe that I'm doing this on purpose because I can't stand the fact that they chose to be with my sister while she was giving birth instead of being with me, and this is my way of getting revenge. They even went to the extent of saying that they were sure I had gotten into the car late that night on purpose because I wanted to make myself the center of attention, especially because I was jealous of my sister since she was giving birth and getting most of the attention from everybody in the family. It's such a horrible, nasty thing to say. I can't even imagine thinking that way about somebody else, no matter how much I might dislike them. The implication that I had caused that accident on purpose because I wanted attention and sympathy from my family is just disgusting. On top of that, they're accusing me of seeking attention even right now, saying they know I found out that my sister had received a promotion at work and was doing well in her life, and I couldn't stand it. So I decided to go out of my way to bring up things from the past and paint them in a bad light. I don't even understand why they would say something like that when they know exactly what they had been trying to do. They were doing exactly what they were accusing me of, and the hypocrisy of it just makes me so angry. I've still managed to ignore all of their messages and kept blocking their numbers ever since they started trying to contact me, but I'm at a loss for what to do next. Should I confront them about their lies? Should I just continue to ignore them and let the family situation sort itself out, or should I try to mend fences for the sake of my niece, who's innocent in all of this? I'm really torn and could use some advice on how to handle this mess of a family situation. Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and things have escalated dramatically. I'm still trying to process everything that's happened, but I feel like I need to share this update with you all. A few days ago, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was shocked to see them at my door after 3 years of no contact. At first, I thought maybe they had come to apologize, but I couldn't have been more wrong. As soon as I opened the door, they started yelling at me, accusing me of deliberately trying to ruin their reputation within the family. My father was red-faced with anger, pointing his finger at me and saying, "How dare you spread lies about us?" I tried to explain that I had only told the truth to my aunt, but they wouldn't listen. My mother chimed in, saying I was jealous of my sister and trying to punish them for being there for her during childbirth. I told them to leave, but they refused. My father stepped closer, his voice getting louder. "You need to fix this mess you've created. Your niece's birthday party is coming up, and nobody wants to attend because of the lies you've spread." That's when I lost it. I yelled back, telling them they were the ones who had been lying and abandoned me when I needed them most. I tried to close the door, but my father put his foot in the way. He pushed against the door, and suddenly, we were in a physical struggle. In the heat of the moment, I shoved him back. Hard. He stumbled backwards, nearly falling over. My mother screamed, and I saw a mix of shock and fear in her eyes. For a moment, we all just stood there, breathing heavily, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Finally, they left, but not before my father turned and said, "This isn't over. You'll regret this." After they left, I broke down. I was shaking and crying, overwhelmed by what had just happened. I've never been a violent person, and the fact that things had escalated to a physical level terrified me. The next day, I received a barrage of messages from various family members. Apparently, my parents had told everyone that I had violently attacked them when they came to make peace. They painted a picture of me as unstable and dangerous. Some family members believed them and sent me messages expressing their disappointment. Others were more skeptical and reached out to ask for my side of the story. I was honest with those who asked, explaining the full situation. My sister sent me a particularly hurtful message, telling me to stay away from her and her daughter. I'm feeling lost and overwhelmed. I know I shouldn't have resorted to physical force, even if it was just a shove, but I also feel like I was backed into a corner and reacting to their aggression. I'm worried about the legal implications. Could they press charges for assault? Should I file a report for harassment? The family is now more divided than ever. Some are firmly on my parents' side, others are on mine, and some are caught in the middle, unsure what to believe. The upcoming birthday party for my niece has become a point of contention, with people taking sides on whether or not to attend. I'm also struggling with guilt. Even though I know my parents' behavior was unacceptable, a part of me wonders if I should have handled things differently. The rational part of me knows I was defending myself, but emotionally, I'm a wreck. My friends have been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've offered to let me stay with them if I feel unsafe in my apartment, and they've been taking turns checking in on me. I'm considering seeking therapy to help me process all of this. The accident 3 years ago, the abandonment by my family, and now this confrontation, it's all taking a toll on my mental health. For now, I've decided to change my phone number and email address. I've also informed my workplace about the situation, in case my parents try to show up there. How do I move forward from here? Should I consider legal action to protect myself? How do I deal with the family members who now see me as the villain in this story? And most importantly, how do I start to heal from all of this trauma? Update 2. It's been about a week since my last update, and the situation with my family has somehow managed to get even more complicated. The most significant event was my niece's 3rd birthday party, which turned into a complete disaster. From what I've heard from my aunt, who attended the party, only a handful of people showed up, mostly immediate family, and a couple of my sister's friends. The vast majority of the extended family chose to stay away due to the ongoing drama. The atmosphere was incredibly tense from the start. My parents were visibly stressed. My sister was on the verge of tears, and my niece kept asking where everyone was. Midway through the party, things came to a head when my mother broke down crying, blaming me loudly for ruining everything and tearing the family apart. This led to an argument between those who sided with my parents and those who were more sympathetic to my side of the story. My niece, overwhelmed by all the shouting and negative emotions, started crying too. My sister lost it, screamed at everyone to leave, saying they had all ruined her daughter's birthday. The party ended abruptly, with guests awkwardly shuffling out. I feel awful about this. Even though I know rationally that this isn't my fault, I can't help but feel guilty. At the same time, I'm angry that my parents are still trying to paint me as the villain in all of this. The family is now more divided than ever. Some are fully supporting my parents, others are on my side, and then there are those in the middle, tired of the whole situation. I've received a mix of messages over the past 24 hours. Some family members have expressed their support for me, while others have sent scathing messages, blaming me for the party fiasco. My sister sent me a particularly nasty email, saying she never wants to see or hear from me again, and that as far as she's concerned, she no longer has a sister. Those words hurt more than I can express. Despite everything, I still love my sister and my niece. I'm struggling with how to move forward from here. Part of me wants to reach out to my sister and try to explain my side of things one more time, but another part wonders if it's better to respect her wishes and keep my distance, at least for now. As for my parents, I'm at a loss. I want to confront them and make them acknowledge the hurt they've caused, but I'm also tired of the constant drama and pain. I've started seeing a therapist, as many of you suggested. It's early days yet, but it feels good to have a professional to talk to about all of this. She's helping me work through my feelings of guilt and anger, and trying to give me tools to set healthy boundaries with my family. One thing the therapist said that really stuck with me is that it's okay to prioritize my own mental health and well-being, even if that means distancing myself from family. She pointed out that the way my parents and sister are behaving is not normal or healthy, and that I'm not responsible for their actions or emotions. I'm trying to take that to heart, but it's hard. Years of family dynamics and emotional manipulation don't disappear overnight. I still find myself wondering if I could have done something differently, if there was a way I could have prevented all of this from happening. But then I remind myself of the facts. I didn't ask for that accident to happen. I didn't ask to be abandoned by my family when I needed them most. And I didn't ask for them to lie about what happened or to show up at my door making accusations. All I did was tell the truth when asked. So where do I go from here? I'm considering writing a letter to the entire family, not to defend myself or accuse anyone, but just to state my truth one last time, and then step away from the whole situation. Maybe if I make it clear that I'm not interested in continuing this drama, things will eventually calm down. I'm also thinking about my niece. Even though my sister doesn't want me in their lives right now, I wonder if I should put some money aside for her future. Maybe set up a college fund, or something she can access when she's older. How do I find peace in all of this? How do I protect myself emotionally while also leaving the door open for potential reconciliation in the future? And how do I stop feeling guilty for a situation that I didn't create? Thank you all for your support. It means more than you know to have a place where I can share all of this and get objective opinions. I'll keep you updated on any major developments, but for now, I'm going to focus on healing and moving forward, one day at a time. Update 3. It's been about a week since my last update, and I'm still processing everything that's happened. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. The biggest development is that I received an email from my parents yesterday. I was shocked when I saw it in my inbox. After all this time, I wasn't expecting to hear from them, especially not after the birthday party fiasco. The email started with an apology. My parents acknowledged that they had handled the situation poorly, both immediately after my accident 3 years ago and in the recent confrontations. They admitted that they had been wrong to prioritize my sister's needs over mine when I was in the hospital, and that they shouldn't have ignored my calls for help. They also apologized for showing up at my apartment and escalating the situation to a physical confrontation. My father expressed deep regret for his aggressive behavior and recognized that it was unacceptable. Furthermore, they admitted to lying to the family about what had happened. They said they were ashamed of their actions and had realized how much damage their lies had caused, not just to me, but to the entire family. The email explained that the disastrous birthday party had been a wake-up call for them. Seeing how their actions had affected my niece and divided the family made them realize the gravity of what they had done. They said they had spent the past week doing a lot of soul searching and had decided it was time to own up to their mistakes. Reading this email left me with a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated, another part felt angry that it had taken this long, and yet another part felt a glimmer of hope that maybe there was a chance to heal our relationship. But mostly, I felt conflicted. This is the apology I've been waiting for 3 years. It seems sincere, and they're taking full responsibility for their actions. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder if it's too little, too late. The hurt they've caused runs deep, and an email can't instantly erase years of pain and betrayal. The email ended with a request to meet in person to talk things through. They said they understand if I'm not ready for that, but they hope that someday I'll be willing to give them a chance to make amends in person. I haven't responded yet. Part of me wants to agree to meet them, to see if there's any chance of salvaging our relationship, but another part is terrified of opening myself up to more hurt. The last time I saw them in person, it ended in a physical altercation. I've discussed the email with my therapist, and she's encouraged me to take my time in responding. She suggested that if I do decide to meet, it might be good to do so in a neutral location, possibly with a mediator present. I've also been thinking about my sister and niece. My parents' email mentioned that they've told my sister the truth about what happened and encouraged her to reach out to me. So far, I haven't heard from her. I miss her and my niece terribly, but I know I need to respect their space right now. As for the rest of the family, apparently my parents have sent out a mass email explaining the situation and apologizing for their lies. I've received a few messages from relatives expressing their shock at the truth and offering their support to me. So now I'm at a crossroads. Do I accept my parents' apology and try to rebuild our relationship? Do I maintain my distance for my own mental health? Is there a middle ground where I can acknowledge their efforts without fully letting them back into my life yet? I'm also grappling with my own feelings of guilt and responsibility. Even though I know logically that I'm not to blame for this situation, there's still a part of me that wonders if I could have handled things differently. Looking ahead, I'm trying to focus on my own healing and growth. I'm continuing with therapy and have started practicing mindfulness meditation to help manage my stress and anxiety. I've also been thinking about making some positive changes in my life. I'm considering looking for a new job, possibly in a different city. Not to run away from my problems, but to give myself a fresh start and some physical distance from all this drama. As for my niece, I've decided to go ahead and set up a college fund for her, regardless of whether my sister wants to maintain a relationship with me. It feels like the right thing to do, and maybe someday, when she's older, she'll understand that I always cared about her. How do I move forward from here? How do I balance the possibility of reconciliation with the need to protect myself emotionally? And how do I start to rebuild my life and my sense of self after all of this? Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and kind words have been a lifeline for me. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I feel a little more equipped to face it, knowing I have this community behind me.